Hello, friends. Today is March 7th, 2025, and you're listening to the While We Still Can podcast. We've got a great guest today. We've got Will Westmoreland here, and we're thrilled to talk to him. Tina's here. I'm here. Welcome. Thanks for joining us, Will.
You bet. I'm excited to be here.
So how's life been treating you lately? You've been a bit of a whirlwind?
Yeah, I've got my standard answer, which is like the same way a baby treats a diaper, but that's not really true. I mean, it's been pretty good. It's been pretty good. It has been a whirlwind though. I came on to TikTok this past summer because I wanted to do two things. I thought that there might be a lot of people that don't really understand how politics works behind the scenes. And I also wanted to talk about what was happening in rural America just because of the first Trump administration and all of the negative impacts that it had. And I thought, you know what, there's a chance this guy could win again. So I just wanted to talk about that. And it's taken off. For whatever reason, it's taken off. But I had a really viral video about a month and a half ago, and I forgot to take my personal email and phone number off of my business website. So it's been crazy. Yeah, like 1,000 emails a day and 100 text messages a day, but we're all caught up now and it's all good. Wow. And we're ready to go. Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is.
You do that on top of your normal, what is your normal day job while fighting for democracy?
We do a couple of different things. I always tell people this right up front. I've been a rural political strategist for several years. My first job was in 1992 on the Clinton Gore campaign in Ohio. I grew up here in Southwest Missouri and moved around the country, but I started out in politics, and then when I had young kids, we made the decision for me to get out of that because there was just too much travel and that kind of thing. So I spent a lot of years in corporate America after that, but always had my fingers in rural politics. I served as a rural county party chair in North Carolina when I lived there. I've served as a rural county party chair here in Missouri, and then just always helped out with, rural people that were running for office anywhere I've ever lived. And then on top of that, I grew up on a big farm here in Southwest Missouri. And when I moved back home a long time ago, got involved again in agriculture, and that's just grown as well. So officially what I do right now is I own Highlander Political Strategies, and we kind of specialize in political technology, how to get the word out. And we really, really like to help people that are running for office in rural America. Democratic, more left-leaning folks that are trying to bring about positive change in rural America, because that's a really hard thing to do. You don't get a lot of donations. It's hard to get the word out, et cetera,
Right.
So that's really interesting, because I find in Missouri, we tend to vote for the people that are doing the exact opposite of what we're trying to do.
Right.
And that has to be like pull your hair out if you have any left under that hat. I am not sure.
Yeah, I do. I did get a haircut today, so there's not much, but
It looks great.
Thank you.
But my husband's bald, so I can say that.
There you go.
But how have you been able to reach? It's like pulling your hair out with reaching people.
Yeah.
If you're voting against
I'll
your
tell
own
you the way I
best
would
interest.
describe it is that a lot of the rural work that I do is almost at this stage charitable work, because we also work on a lot of big campaigns. Like Nathan works with me, my son Nathan works with me at Highlander, and we did all of the phone calls and texting, for instance, for the Ossoff and Warnock campaigns in Georgia. And we've got a lot of clients in Texas and, just all over the country. So typically what I find myself doing, in all honesty, guys, is we make our money from those bigger campaigns, and then we turn around and we try to in-kind a lot of stuff to people that are running for office in rural America, especially in Missouri where I live, because I've got 4 kids and I've got 5 grandkids, and 3 of those grandchildren are granddaughters. Yep. And, so I'm doing everything I can to try to make this state and this country a better place for them to live in. And then the other thing I do is we have Highlander Ag, which is, I always call it like an alternative ag company. And what we do is we raise native plants and blackberries and Chinese chestnuts and mushrooms. And much to my son's chagrin, he's sitting in here with me, much to my son's chagrin, we're working on trying to get into the milling area of agriculture so that we can mill Chinese chestnuts for gluten-free flour and that kind of thing. So
Cool.
that's what's made for this interesting mix. We've got a mix of agriculture and a mix of the political, and it just kind of naturally came together to advocate for issues in rural America.
Absolutely. Well, and
That's so cool.
I'll be 51 this year, and I remember when I was a kid in rural Missouri, the Democratic Party seemed dominant, or like as a
Yeah.
teenager,
Yeah.
and most of the even county,
Claire
city elect.
McCaskill.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's just like I think I heard you say on a TikTok once that, well, maybe you didn't say it, but it's like Fox News and all the right-wing media.
That was me. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was me.
It's just
Yeah.
essentially, pardon the word, brainwashed, but it's kind of what
Rotted.
it's done. And I heard another quote that, Fox News did to our parents what they thought MTV would do to us.
That's exactly right.
And now here we
I
are.
heard that the other day, and I thought that's really appropriate. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, we had this thing back in the day when you and I were young. I'm not too much older than you. I just look like it. But we had this thing back in the day called the Fairness Doctrine.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a law, but basically it was an understanding that if you were broadcasting over the public airwaves, then you were going to present both sides of the story. And news media back in the day did a pretty effective job of that, telling both sides of the story. Well, during, you and I were really young, but when Ronald Reagan was president, we did away with the Fairness Doctrine. And that was done. A lot of people don't know this because, what could be more boring than studying media history, right? But the truth of the matter is that was done with a plan already established. It's kind of like getting Trump was elected with Project 2025 waiting in the wings, right? Well, same thing happened with the Fairness Doctrine. They already had this, Fox News and talk radio and Rush Limbaugh and all of this waiting out in the wings. When they eliminate the Fairness Doctrine, it does away with this requirement that local radio stations have to tell both sides of the story, so they can then begin just inundating their listeners with one side of the story, which is very conservative talk radio. And then they start preaching this message of you can't trust the media, you can't trust government, you can't trust anybody with a liberal viewpoint. So I'm getting ready actually tonight to make a video about this. It's the same way they're tearing down government. I use this analogy. It's a horrible analogy. I apologize for it in advance. But if you've had a relationship, like, who is it easier to break up with? It's really hard to break up with somebody that treats you really well. That person that does all the right things. They ask you about your opinion. They try to do those little things that make you happy, and you're just not feeling the love, right? So it comes down to that difficult conversation. It's time to break up. And it's horrible to break up with somebody that treats you well. Who's it easy to break up with? It's easy to break up with a jackass, right? It's easy to break up with somebody that doesn't treat you well. Well, I think that's what they're trying to do with our opinions toward the federal government right now. It's easier to close these departments when they convince you that they're part of the swamp. They're not spending your money correctly. Your kids are going to school on Monday and coming home the opposite sex on Tuesday. Not my words, an actual argument that they made during the election.
Oh, we know.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
We're painfully aware.
Right. So I just look at it like, it's a relationship tactic. They're trying to convince everybody this relationship isn't good for you, so let us destroy it. And then at the other end of the equation, you got it. You went exactly where I was going to go. At the other end of the equation, his buddies buy it all up. It's privatized, and you can rest assured that the Trump family will own some percentage of that privatization,
Well, it's like when people are like, Elon Musk, why are you mad at him for saving you money? I'm like, thinking a billionaire is coming in to help you for free is thinking a stripper likes you. Come on, guys. Like, come on.
And who hasn't been there?
I mean, I remember Vogue back in the day. But seriously, like, what are you like, no one does anything for free. Maybe we know that because we're females. Like, it's so obvious to me. But then they're like, why are you mad? He's saving money. He's doing Nazi salutes, dude. No, he's not saving money.
And, hey, you made a great point that I don't want to skip over, Tina, and that is I think women absolutely get what's going on. Like this analogy that I just gave you, when I do those videos or when I talk about it, I'm talking to the men out there, because
I know,
I can't
and I
tell
love
you
that.
how many women have told me, listen, I see what's going on here. This is an absolute play to get us to think that government is bad, it's destructive, it's broken, they're spending our money the wrong way, so we can build this seething desire to tear it apart.
And I mean, you can watch it throughout, like you said, you were talking about the Fairness Doctrine or whatever, and how they play the long game. I know that this has been,
Yeah.
they're like waiting 30 years. They're like, this is the golden age, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, they've been playing, like, this is not going anywhere good for anybody. Like, you in the trailer yelling about this, nothing is coming for you.
Yeah.
Nothing.
Well, and when Lisa and I were younger, the thing that you would notice is, like, all of a sudden, once the Fairness Doctrine was gone, you would go out to a dairy barn, or you would go out to a job site where there were construction workers and pipe fitters, and there was one radio just kind of parked out in the middle of everything with the volume turned up loud so everybody could hear it, and it was Rush Limbaugh, just spewing hate everywhere. And over time, in the beginning, I kind of imagine it was like going to a carnival. In the beginning, people were probably
Reality
like,
TV.
wow, this guy's crazy. Yeah. This guy's crazy. But then you listen and you listen and you listen week after week, month after month, year after year. And all of a sudden it's like, oh, wow, maybe this guy's telling us something we need to know. Yeah. And after 40 years, here we are.
And you're dehumanizing humans, and you're doing all of the, I know, it screams out in my face. Okay.
And people that support, I'm sorry, go ahead, Lisa. Sorry
it's okay. It's okay. Yeah. I was just going to say that, that brings us to the unfortunate point that there are some folks that we're not going to bring back from that. Right. They don't, the cognitive dissonance is too strong for them to ever, like you say, you don't have to admit you were wrong, admit you were lied to.
We use that often.
All the time. Yeah. Thank you for that.
No, but you're welcome. Even a blind squirrel finds an acorn, guys. Use it all you want. It's fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I am.
But you see some videos like those on the street videos where the interviewer will speak of a scenario that Trump did and say that Biden did it. And then the person they're interviewing is, oh, that's horrible. And then they learn that Trump did it and they justify it. And so
immediately, there's no regret, there's no buyer's remorse. It's just immediately they pivot. And I got to tell you,
impressive.
It is impressive. I got to tell you though, the reason I came up with that saying was because the truth is, when we're talking about Trump supporters, typically we're talking about men, and I'm not going to tell you anything you don't already know, but men have a really hard time admitting when they're wrong. And we would almost rather do anything else in the world than admit we're wrong. Like, well, the way you set it up caused me to have.
Sorry you chose to feel that way about what I said. That's my favorite line that I've received.
I'm trying to give that out. Listen, if we sit here and argue about you admitting you're wrong, we're never going to get to where we need to be. But if we just admit you were lied to and you made your decision based on those lies, maybe we can have a conversation. But I got to tell you, like, a lot of people know me from that video that I did to that younger farmer with that younger farmer in mind. He's kind of a perfect example of that. Like, within a couple of weeks, he came onto our live and he said he thought Donald Trump should be impeached. And I thought, well, what more could you ask for? But that said, I've watched a lot of his videos since then, and maybe you have too. And once they gave him his money, it's kind of interesting how they released 1% of the funds, and the loudest people on social media got their money first. Now I'm starting to see those same pro-Trump videos creep back into his repertoire. A lot of conspiracy theory, that kind of thing. So there you have it. Yeah. I had some hope for him, but I watch it now and I just smile because I remember when I used to try to be all things to all people, and you just can't do that, my friend. You can't. No. If you're going to go down the path, go all the way.
Well, be true to yourself, and that's what I've been trying to tell people in these really scary times. I mean, I am an avid reader. I really enjoy history, much to my dismay at this time, because I'm like, guys, this was in the books, okay? This stuff was in the book. We read about this.
I'm
Or,
reading that,
like,
Lisa. Yeah.
oh, it's amazing. That's why we started this pot. Like,
Yeah.
that was our initial start. But, I'm like, okay, my World War II hyper focus is really, the bells, guys, and they're like, you're actually just so dramatic. And I'm like, no, the words are the same. The words are the same, guys. And so, yeah, it's just.
Well, and that's part of the problem, Tina, is we study history, but we don't really dig deeply into history. And I think what a lot of people don't understand, that this guy over my shoulder over here is my maternal grandfather, and he was born in 1917. He lived through the Great Depression, and then as soon as the Great Depression was over, he went right into World War II, and then he helped build the largest middle class in the history of the world during the 1950s. And I think what a lot of people forget, MAGA doesn't like it when you talk about the racist aspects of Donald Trump's support. But the truth of the matter is, there's a class in this country that is trying to protect the status quo, because the status quo was built for them. And when I say them, 100%. I don't even mean just white. I mean white and wealthy. My grandpa used to say all the time, anytime he would see these silly little fights pop up about, social structure issues and that type of thing, he would say, or culture issues, he would say, they've got us fighting for crumbs under the table while they're eating steak up at the table above. And absolutely, that's the strategy. Why do you think all of our great-grandparents said that all the time? Because they lived through it.
Right.
It wasn't the rich guy in that little town in Southwest Missouri that was losing everything he had. It was all the people that had their money in his bank.
Yeah. I mean, the rich folks are they're going to wait for the market to drop, and then they're going to buy more stock, or or
do you think that's
profit
what
off
they're
the
doing
move
with that? Do you think that's what the tariff thing is like?
I think what it is, I say things now, ladies, that I never thought I would say in my entire life, because I thought they sounded conspiratorial. Okay, like I've never been a conspiracy theorist. I'm the one guy that was arguing that no, it really was Lee Harvey Oswald that killed JFK, those kinds of things. So I want you to understand that's my background when I say what I'm about to say, okay? I really do believe that this is all about the privatization of the federal government, that this is a grift.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
I really do believe that. And I think the people, the billionaires that supported him and Donald Trump himself, I think they're in it for that privatization and that grift. And what they've realized a long time ago is that the culture wars will get them there the fastest. So they don't care if the people around them are destroying America with these culture wars, as long as in the end it gets them that privatization, that they're looking for. I mean, we've done it with prisons. We've partially done it with education. Yeah.
Well, and now, I heard in the news, the post office, and I often think of rural America when people talk about privatizing the post office, because like, guys, do you think it's profitable for the system to deliver one letter like 10 miles down an unpaved road?
The other day from a statistician that specialized in shipping costing, and it said that what we pay $1 for right now to ship something to a rural area or to ship it from a rural area, on a cost basis analysis, $1 would become $27.90 or something like that.
Wow, so that's wild.
That's just to send a letter. Imagine if you were shipping something that right now costs $130 to ship, because the post office is subsidized to the point that it can deliver to. I mean, it was the whole reason it was created.
Yeah,
so
it's
it could deliver to rural America at a decent rate.
Yeah, and same with the roads too, for that matter.
Well, and that's what a lot of this is they've told us so much. They're like, government isn't making money, or it's sucking money, these services. And I'm like, these government services are not to produce money. They are a service for the people that we are paying into. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's to make our life better.
It is.
And that's
but I'll tell you something else you can put in your notebook and use this, because what people forget as a business owner, it's not just private dollars that get recycled through the economy 5 to 7 times, okay? We always like to talk about the fact that when a business, like as a small business owner, when I pay my employees, that dollar that I pay them goes through the economy 5 to 7 times. Well, The same thing is true with federal dollars that are being spent.
Right.
You know, when the federal government has to buy vehicles for the Park Service, that money goes through the economy 5 to 7 times. When they've got to pay, you know, somebody who's an expert in education to create a program that delivers special services to kids in need, that dollar spent goes through the economy 5 to 7 times. So that, you know, we look at it as just money that goes out the door and it's gone. Not by any stretch. That money's actually even taxed again. If you think about it,
That's a
every
good
time
point.
that money is spent, after that dollar is spent, it's taxed again, and that money cycles back into the government to be spent again to cycle through the economy. So even from a purely capitalistic perspective, you cannot argue that the federal government, you know, is only an expender of funds. It's just not true, you know. So their own argument falls.
Yeah.
Well, but again, they are a lot of people are operating from like a mindset of nothing's real.
Right.
Like, and I'm ask them, how do you do your job if nothing's real? Like, you do anesthesia. Like, something has to be real, or how are you doing your anesthesia, you know?
Yeah.
And so
well,
you should, you know, I don't know.
That's a great point, because, you know, a lot of people, if they would just stop and think about it, they know what government can do personally. Okay.
Right.
So I'm going to give you, if I could go on a little bit of a soapbox rant here, I'll give you a couple of examples. So when I was a kid, when I was 12 years old, I grew up on a big farm, and we were out digging post holes for a riding arena for the horses that we own. So we trained the horses in this arena. We dug 40 holes that day. And on the last hole, the tractor hit a limestone shale underground, and the tractor jumped sideways, and it grabbed my left arm and it pulled it into the farm machinery.
Oh,
and I almost
so sorry
lost
to
my
hear
arm.
that.
Well,
that's
it was so
terrifying.
long ago now that, you know, it's just a way of life when it happens to you as a kid. But the deal is this: I laid out there on the ground for an hour and 40 minutes waiting for an ambulance to show up, because there were no services in my rural area. Once they got there and they got me stabilized, and the truth of the matter is, had I had major, arterial damage or something like that, that would have been it. My ticket would have been punched. So they get me stabilized. Then it takes another 40 to 45 minutes to get to the hospital. So you've got this golden hour, you know, that everybody talks about, you know, Lisa or Tina, the golden hour. And that was just blown away. I mean, it's just, you know, it's fate, good luck. The good Lord was looking out for me, whatever you want to call it, that I survived. Well, now, because of federal dollars being expended in rural areas, if that same accident happened in the same place now, there'd be an ambulance there within 12 minutes, and I'd be at the hospital within 40 minutes. I'd get there within that golden hour. And that gets replicated over and over and over again, you know, every day. And then as a farmer, you know, whether you want to admit it or not, if you want to admit what's causing it, because a lot of farmers know it's getting hotter and it's getting drier. They just don't want to admit it's happening because of man-made climate change,
right? What is that? Well,
I don't know. Is
that a man
I mean, I do
thing
know,
again?
but
I don't.
Yeah. But the point is, all these programs that are out there, and the one that this young farmer Skylar was taking advantage of, we're doing a lot of things like planting warm weather grasses that grow better now that it's getting hotter and they grow with less water. We're doing rotational grazing so that we can let our grass rest in between cattle being on there and grazing on it, and all these other things. That makes farming better. It helps us produce more product that we can feed the world with. We pay for a lot of that out of our pocket, and then the federal government comes in and they reimburse us for that. So this idea that the federal government doesn't do any good is just absurd. I mean, 50% of the dollars that are put into Medicaid go to, you know, cover the cost of rural health care. And to your point, it's just, we forget sometimes. It's like that old saying. Remember when people used to say, the government better keep its hands off of my Medicare?
Yeah.
You know? I mean, when Clinton was trying to change, you know, the medical system in this country, there literally was a movement of people saying the government better keep its hands off my Medicare. That's the environment and it's even worse now. It's more of an idiocracy.
Well, and now they're just like, as long as we can have the orange man, he can take all of our things. Oh, that's
as far as
well.
You know, another way we've all been scammed is you think about health insurance, right? Like, what's the
Luigi?
yeah, but okay. So the best way we can distribute the risk for all of us is to have the biggest pool possible, right? So gee, I wonder how we could do that.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
a nationalized healthcare option has just been absolutely villainized. And, in my opinion, that's very purposeful because that would harm the insurance industry, and we can't have that because it's very profitable.
Well, that's what we're trying to do right now.
And we all know that Medicare and Medicaid and the current, the VA system, the systems we have surely have room for improvement. There's no doubt about that. But without some kind of public option to force that cost down, it's hard to make it work.
Look at the VA. The VHA is a section inside the VA that provides medical services to veterans, okay? The truth of the matter is 92% of veterans are very satisfied with VHA care. That's 36% higher than private hospitals around this country. The other thing is they give the majority of veterans hospitals a 4 to 5 ranking out of 5, because of the services that they offer. And then they offer services that nobody else offers. So you can't make the argument based on and listen, nobody's more vocal about the care they get, their satisfaction levels than our veterans are, because they've earned it, right? And they know they've earned it. But that's not, in this new administration, that doesn't matter. They're about to cut 80,000 jobs. We got that leaked memo just a couple of days ago that shows they're going to cut 80,000 jobs in addition to what they've already cut out of the VA. Well, I can tell you guys without any hesitation at all, this is about hospital privatization. They are going to, it'll be a two-step process because Doug Collins, the VA secretary, has already talked about it. They're starting to demonize the VA. It's part of the, it's part of the cesspool. It's part of the swamp. They don't offer good services. Well, all the data shows that's not true.
Right.
Veterans are very happy with it. But I guarantee you the first thing they're going to do is they're going to privatize the people working inside the VA. So these will be contracted positions from outside of government versus people that are employed by the VA itself. And then the second thing they'll do is they'll start sending veterans to, locally owned privatized hospitals, and they'll start reimbursing them. And then you can go rest assured that when you pull up dark secrets and all the other funding mechanisms that show where donations are going to, our politicians will be invested in private hospitals, and the friends of Donald J. Trump will be heavily invested in the ownership of those hospitals.
Solid grift.
Yeah.
And he's not known for the most quality items. So,
No.
Okay, well, I was going to ask you, Will, before we wrap this up, what are 3 things that we can do from here on out when we're talking to people or not 3 necessarily, but a couple things that we can do.
What can we do to push back? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm all about effective pushback, okay? So I'll give you the first example. Like everybody tells us, write your congressperson, send an email. And you should do that, okay? But I think what happens a lot of the time is we send a communication to them and we get this standard form letter back and then we stop there. What I've been doing when I make these calls, I'll give you an example. When that fiasco happened in the Oval Office the other day and he belittled the president of Ukraine, when I called my elected officials, instead of just saying I thought it was disgusting, I said, when is Mark Alford, my congressperson, when is he going to stand up, and go public and talk about how horrible this was? What day? Because I'd like to be there to support him. I want to be there when he gives his speech to talk about how disgusting it was that the country that America signed an agreement to protect if they gave up their nuclear weapons. I want to be there that day when he talks about how disgusting this was. So don't take these canned answers and responses. You don't have to accept that. When you get that letter back in the mail or you get that canned email, call them right back again and say, hey, I got your canned response that you sent to everybody that asked you about this question. I want to know, what are you going to do to get them to stop defunding rural schools? I want to know, what are you going to do to keep them from closing 64 rural hospitals in the state of Missouri over the next 2 years? And hold them accountable to give you an answer to that, and keep calling back. What time would be a good time for me to call again? Could I call next Tuesday at 3:00? Could you have an answer for me then? So really press that hard.
That's great. Like, are you getting an email back? Because I have not gotten one damn email or any reply back. I call every day. I had a meeting with Eric Schmidt's staffer the other day.
Yeah.
Because I'm annoying as hell. I'm going to Mark Alfred.
Yeah, that's my congressman, is Mark Alford. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to his office tomorrow, so I'll let you know if you have anything you want me to tell him personally.
Yeah. But I've said it all. Trust me.
I mean, I'm sure we all have, but I'm going to their offices.
Yeah.
I've been going.
Yeah. Well, we've got to do that. And the other thing we have to do is, I think what you guys are doing is critically important. We've got to get the word out there in these alternative, through these alternative communication sources. And listen, the other thing I really want to stress to people is, when I talk about meeting people where they are, don't make the mistake of thinking I'm saying you have to agree with them, or you have to say that, the horrible things that they believe are okay. When I talk about meeting people where they are, what I'm trying to do is approach people at these public speaking events and all these other things that I do. And I say, listen, we're all from rural America. We all depend on hospitals being there for our sick moms that have had a stroke, or for our kids that are trying to get a good education. That was promised to them, by the way. The promise was made that you could go to school anywhere in this country, and regardless of whether it was in downtown Manhattan or a rural school district in Missouri, you could get the same basic quality education that would prepare you to go on to higher education or to be prepared for life. We all play by those rules. That's the system that we live in. That's at risk. Then I try to transition to that's at risk, and here are the reasons why. Because there's plenty of proof out there that shows that Medicaid cuts are going to unduly impact rural America. If you cut Head Start, you're cutting the #1 daycare program for rural America, for small family farms, for people that work in rural America. We don't think about that. We just think of it as an incredibly good early education program, but it's also the #1 daycare program in rural America.
That's a great point.
Yeah, so meeting people where they are. And then the last thing I'll say is just drag those fingernails across the chalkboard. Go to these protests and speak up. And, if nothing else, it feels good. A week from tomorrow, I'm going to go to one in Wichita, Kansas. We've got this group called the Back 40. And if you don't mind, I'm going to pitch it just 1 second.
Please do. Tell us all about it.
If you want to learn more about it, you can go to www.theback40official, all spelled out, theback40official, FORTY.com, and you can register there to be part of the Back 40. And we've got thousands of people nationwide. We're organized in 3 states now, and we're doing all kinds of things. We're showing up to help local candidates. We've got people that are stepping up to run for local office in rural areas. We're dragging our fingernails across that chalkboard, like I said, to make noise and let people know, Tina, exactly what you're doing. We're showing up at elected officials' offices just to say, no way, this isn't going to be as easy as a form letter. You need to understand that.
I was born for this, guys.
Absolutely.
I'll be here.
Absolutely. So, join organizations like that. And don't forget, there are already a lot of really good organizations out there that are fighting this fight. The ACLU has filed already, I think, over 40 lawsuits around the country to stop what Trump is doing. A lot of incredible women's health organizations out there that are fighting to expand women's rights, back to the point that they were at before Dobbs. Give them $5 or $10 or $20 if you can afford to do it, because that all adds up. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, because they're doing a great job of filing lawsuits and pushing back against all this stuff. I see cracks in the armor. If I had a message of hope for everybody, I see cracks in the armor. Like, the dirty little secret in politics is I know all these Republican political consultants, okay? And when we go to these conferences and things like that, we talk. And the first thing I learned a long time ago is they do not respect their base. They do not respect the intellectual capacity of their base. In the beginning, that was funny to them. When they were growing the Tea Party movement And then when they were pushing Donald Trump, it was funny. Look at what we're doing. We're owning the libs, etc. Now they're scared. Now they would never admit it. Yeah, they would never admit it on your podcast. But they've got constituents back there pushing back against them and saying, by God, you better not cut the funding to 50% of the rural healthcare facilities out there by cutting Medicaid. But they know they've got their constituents on one side saying don't do it, but they know if they speak out against it, they've got Donald Trump on the other side, and he's going to make sure they get primary because he's got this privatization goal in mind.
Behind closed doors, are they like, oh my God, what have we done?
Yes, absolutely. Not all of them. I don't want to leave the impression that it's all of them because, sure, some of them cut their teeth on MAGA and they're only in politics because they came up through, the Tea Party and MAGA. But I will tell you, like, the biggest C4s out there, the biggest PACs out there, oh yeah, you get a couple of drinks in them and you start talking about the monster they've created, and they're very, very honest about it.
But, they don't feel that bad because they're still doing it.
They're getting a paycheck.
It's a lot of money, guys.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money.
It must be a lot of money because one of the things I think about a lot are guys like, I'm just going to throw Lindsey Graham out there for an example.
Yeah.
Like, when January 6th happened, there are a lot of people that were immediately coming out against that and saying, this must stop. And literally within 48 hours, they seem to have changed their tune. And it just, again, I'm not going to put on a foil hat and wonder why, but what makes a human being that's got, some dignity, if you will, behave that way? I mean,
I always go down the dark paths with Lindsey Graham. Like, I wonder what kind of compromat they have on him, or something like that. But because it was so twisted and quick-natured in him. I don't know if it was just, bitterness. A lot of that, coincided with the death of John McCain, who kind of kept him level-headed, etc. It also came with a lot of that stuff that broke in the news about his personal life. And I always say with Lindsey Graham, there's always the chance that it was the perfect storm and something snapped, So now it's just about getting even with all those people you hate. But I got to tell you, there's just so many of them on the Republican side. Like, if I hear Susan Collins one more time,
she's
talking
troubled.
talking about looking in somebody's eyes and, I'm troubled but I
concerned,
they told me they wouldn't do it. So I count on, I believe them. It's absolutely ridiculous, but they're, probably the understatement of the century, but there does seem to be a huge moral deficit, on the Republican side right now.
Yeah. I mean, I just don't know how, I guess I'm a fairly justice-minded person. I don't know how you can go to bed at night and get a good night's sleep knowing that you've behaved that way.
Maybe they don't.
You can see it in their eyes.
They could all be medicated,
They're
Valid point.
We saw those White House pharmacy lists.
Yeah. Yeah.
They ain't
That's
sleeping.
Great.
Well, I think the good news is there are chinks in the armor. I mean, we heard just the other day about what happened between Elon Musk and Marco Rubio in the cabinet meeting. And apparently there were a lot of people that voiced their opinion in there. We also know from leaked reports, and I just think this is the height of cowardice, even Lindsey Graham behind the scenes is complaining to the White House. He just doesn't have the courage to do it out in front of the cameras. And there are a lot of Republican senators that fall into that category, which to me is, like I said, is just a height of cowardice. It's like if there was ever a time to speak up publicly and loudly, it's now.
Yeah, and history is going to record people that do very positively.
I think so too.
You can't burn all the books. Come on.
No, there's too many of them. There's too many of them.
We got the interwebs now.
Yeah, we do. But I think that we just got to keep the heat on, guys. It's tiring. I know. Like I tell everybody, it's like drinking out of a fire hose 24/7.
Absolutely.
And the minute you think you've got one thing kind of understood and you're pushing back, it's like, the finger in the dam everywhere.
Yeah. Or whack-a-mole. Remember whack-a-mole?
Whack-a-mole. Yeah, that's a good one too. But
in the book on tyranny that you're reading, you read about how fascism, that's
right.
what they do. They're just hitting. So that's the point. That's the point.
Steve Bannon said the quiet part out loud. You do 6 things, and if 2 of them squeak through, then you're good as gold.
Yeah.
You're good as gold.
I mean, Unfortunately, the people that are running the show aren't stupid, and they're playing the long game. But we just have to do the best we can to fight back.
Yeah, and I do think that that's part of what I'm trying to do is just educate, because I do think that if we can get people in rural America that are out here with us to understand the ramifications of cutting these programs and why they're being cut.
Sure.
You know, right now I still don't see a lot of people in rural America thinking all the way through the process. What happens if 50% of the rural healthcare funding goes away? What's that going to mean for you? And think about all the people, like my mom had a stroke in 2018, and think about or 2017. And right now we're in the process of trying to spend down her life savings on medical care so that we can get to the point that Medicaid kicks in. And we're almost there. I don't know if you guys knew this, but like that's what you have to do in this country. You have to spend through all of their resources before Medicaid kicks in. What about people like us? If they cut Medicaid and those programs are no longer there, now we've already spent everything she saved as a working woman, thinking we had to do that in order to get her the Medicaid help that she needed. Well, now you don't have anything coming from Medicaid and you don't have any savings left. And repeat
that's a
that
real
story
tragedy.
Millions of times. Yeah.
And I fear that a lot of people are going to have to experience personal pain before they'll be able to recognize what's happening.
Their food stamps aren't going to be in there.
And that's tough because, you know,
kids suffer.
The thing is, like with farmers and ranchers, everybody says, you know, well, 70% of them voted for Trump. Well, and I get that. Like, I can remember saying on election night, maybe everybody's going to have to eat from trash cans before we fix this problem. But then on the other side of that, once I get through that anger, it's like, well, 30% of them didn't. Right. And you know what? It's not going to be the big wealthy corporate farmers that suffer if these programs go away. It's going to be small family farms. It's going to be single moms and poor kids, you know, whose grocery prices go up by 300%. It's going to be 350 million people around the world that go to bed hungry every night. Those are the people that are going to suffer if we just throw our hands up and say, well, they're getting what they deserve. You know, even if none of them change, we still got to stop it because it's the right thing to do for marginalized people out there that don't have any alternatives when it comes to food, et cetera, if we take these sources away. You know?
Right.
And that could also be you at any point in time,
sure
whether
could.
you realize it or not.
Sure
so
could. My dad
if
passed
you're not
away.
Do it 'cause...
Yeah. My dad passed away from cancer when I was 5 years old. And if it wouldn't have been for food stamps and government housing, we would have been in a world of hurt. We lived on that from the time we lived on it for 2 years. And then one day my grandpa just showed up and took us all out to the farm. And then I was a farm kid, you know, but for 2 years, and I can still remember to this day, and Lisa, you may remember this. It was funny money, right? They didn't have an EBT card. We had, we called it funny money. It was green and red and blue and brown, and they were different denominations of food stamps. And I can still remember to this day when my mom would pull that out to pay for food, there'd be some old man standing 3, people back, and he'd say, "Get a job," not knowing that she was already working full time and trying to go to college.
I used to work at a grocery store when I was in high school, and I remember that. And, I remember, like you say, knowing that the person that was using that had a job and, had a couple kids, and sometimes they would have like a aura of being ashamed. I'm like, you're trying to feed your kids. It's cool. It's okay.
My mom was great. You had no idea the ass whipping of monumental proportions you were opening up with her if you're some old white guy screaming, "Get a job," from the back of the line. You were running a really good chance that my mom would spider monkey you right there in the line.
Good for her. Good for her.
She was just that kind of lady. Still is. Stroking everything. She's still hell on wheels. So,
Sounds like a pretty cool gal.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah,
she is.
That's awesome.
So, but we're going to keep pitching to rural America and talking with them about, why the cuts in these programs are bad. And I do have to tell you guys, like 4 or 5 times a week, I'll get a message, from somebody that's been listening for a while. And they say, "Hey, you know what? You've changed my mind on this."
Oh, that's rewarding. Wow.
There aren't a whole lot that say, "Okay, I hate Trump now and I'm going to work with," but they've changed their minds on Medicaid cuts. They've changed their minds on, tearing apart the federal government. It's like I'll take what I can get in the stages that I can get it.
Planting a seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and even if everybody's a jerk and has no sense of benevolence, investing in people and keeping them out of poverty is going to keep us out, the crime levels down.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you make a bunch of people desperate, and what are they going to do?
Yeah.
They're going to do what they got to do to feed their kids
we
and to
use
survive.
more of those safety net benefits here in rural America than they do in the blue cities. And you tell a lot of rural people that, and they're shocked, but it's true.
Yeah.
It doesn't change the fact that it's true. We use more welfare, we use more, daycare assistance, we use more of everything, and that's okay. I mean, rural America has been ignored for a long time from an economic vitality perspective. So it's okay that those programs are there, and it's okay that we use them. But then don't turn around and say we should take them away from everybody else.
Right.
And
Well, and if people in the city want to eat, then they need to support the rural Americans that are putting food out there.
Flip it around. Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, speaking of eating, I have to go.
There you go. Yeah.
I have to go be a trad wife upstairs.
Well, I'm telling you that flew by. Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate it.
Likewise. Thank you so much. We appreciate you.
You bet.
I hope you get to feeling better.
Thank you.
Okay. And I'll link it to you and email it to you and everything.
Okay. That sounds good.
Okay.
And as we
Thank you.
Oh,
awesome. We would love that too. Yeah.
Bye.
Take care, Will. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.